I'm going to start recording here now as well. Here we go. Okay. One more. Sorry, there's like 3 different steps to this. Let me do that. Ollie is in Jefferson City tonight, so he's there. Okay. Are we good, Ollie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So I mentioned this in one of the 2 case studies that we just did, but chapter 13 is looking at vision and mission statements. So we're going to look at those a little bit here. So before we jump into chapter 13, a couple of the learning objectives from this chapter, and somebody keep me on track. If I get to like half an hour and I'm still going, actually I'm going to set my alarm for half an hour so that I don't go over, because I don't want to. I like this chapter a lot, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. So let me set my clock for 30 minutes, and when it goes off, we'll be done either way. There we go. Okay. All right, so the learning objectives for this chapter are as follows. Explain the relationship among vision, mission, strategy, and mechanisms for execution. Create your personal leadership vision. Use the common themes of powerful visions in your life and work. Describe 4 basic approaches for framing a noble purpose that followers can believe in. Understand how leaders formulate and implement strategy, and apply the elements of effective strategy. Okay, so going to strategic leadership. Strategic leadership is looking at the future of a company. You can always look back at the past, look at financial statements, look at how things have been done in the past, but strategic leadership is the ability to anticipate, envision the future, maintain flexibility, think strategically, and initiate changes that will create a competitive advantage for the organization in the future. Now, this is kind of a broad question, but can anyone think of any organizations or businesses today that are very strong when it comes to strategic leadership? Looking to the future, trying to determine different strategies, or has a great ability to, it seems like they're always anticipating what the next move in their industry is going to be, and they're always at the forefront. Any that come to mind? I would say one that comes to mind for me is Tesla, the automobile company. They've been able to not necessarily get ahead of other companies, because a lot of other companies have incorporated battery-powered cars in the past, or electric cars, but they've definitely took it. They have a vision of the future that seems to go well beyond what a lot of other car companies are looking at right now. They're thinking strategically. It seems like they're always initiating changes, or always looking for the competitive advantage that's going to move their company forward and leave the rest of the car companies in the dust. No pun intended. But what are some other companies that you would say kind of fit that, always seem to be on the forefront or the cutting edge, or when it comes to strategy, seem to always be there? Amazon. Okay, describe what their strategy or how they kind of do that.
The whole shipping everything to you.
Yeah.
Started that, and if you look back 10 years ago, now everyone has Amazon all the time.
Yeah.
Becoming more important here in the current climate.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Amazon.
And establishing their shipping infrastructure, they can have the Prime to their shipping.
Yeah, Amazon Prime was a great strategy, which definitely was at the forefront. Now they also, I don't know if any of you, don't they have like Amazon Prime where they create their own content now, like movies and TV shows, and it seems like whoever's in the upper management at Amazon is continually trying to strategize, how can we continue to own the market, but also expand into other markets as well. So I would agree with that. Amazon is very strong at strategic leadership. Any other companies that you would say?
I'd say Netflix. They kind of started the whole streaming boom and just in the massive industry.
Yeah, Netflix, I would agree with that. And they were kind of the first company to make original content, like Netflix originals. I think they I think they were the first streaming service to have their own original movies or TV shows. So yeah, they continue to push forward. Any other companies you would say would fit in that strategic leadership that really excel in that way? Apple, yeah, I would agree with that. They always seem to have a product. Well, everyone wants their products. I mean, it's, they seem to, whether it's updated cameras or what do you call them? The new earbuds, what are they called? AirPods. They seem to be not just on the cutting edge of technology, but also when it comes to maybe fashion or the look of what people want. They always seem to be on the cutting edge of that as well. Okay, any other companies?
Just the record, I bought all that stuff, but I don't own any of it. My kids got it all.
Your kids own all the Apple products?
Well, I got
You got one thing? Okay. Any other examples? Okay. I think there are probably a lot of companies that we probably don't recognize that have done a lot or been very strategic over these last few months with coronavirus. And we'll probably see a lot of those companies flourish in the coming months or years as their new techniques or the way they've envisioned the future kind of takes over. So keep an eye out for that. I think it will be interesting to see how people envision the future moving forward, especially with cleanliness and those type of things, or working from home as opposed to working on site, and how companies work through that over these next few months. So a chart here, which is on page 398 of the textbook, gives a nice kind of summary of what we'll be talking about here in this chapter. So this chart or this triangle here kind of defines what strategic leadership looks like. The first, and really I think the most important, is the vision of a company. And we'll look at some visions that are listed in the textbook here. But the vision answers the question, where are we headed? The mission, which gets into a little bit more detail and talks about right now, the here and now. It answers the question, who are we? The strategy is looking at the mission and the vision and asking yourself, how do we get there? And then finally, mechanisms for execution. You look at the strategy and figure out, what do we do right now to get to implement that strategy. Those strategies lead into the mission, and the mission to the vision. So all of those things come into play on that chart. Okay, so before I turn to the next slide, which lists a couple things, what are some of the skills, if you're in a leadership position and you want to be strong when it comes to strategic leadership, what are some of the skills that do you believe are necessary to be strong in strategic leadership? Any skills that come to mind? Okay, well, the textbook talks about a couple here, and I'll just go over these quickly, but anticipating threats and opportunities, we've talked about those before in this class, and in another class I teach a SWOT analysis, but being able to kind of look into the future and have an idea of what's coming down downstream on that. Challenging the status quo, always looking for ways to improve or buck the system. Interpreting trends, looking at the past to see where are we moving, what's happening now. And then finally, achieve alignment. And that's the idea that once you form some sort of vision or strategy, that everybody buys in on it within the organization. Because you can be a strategic leader, but if you don't have the buy-in from everybody in the organization, it's not going to be effective. So that alignment across departments and throughout the organization is highly important. Okay, so the definition of a vision is an attractive, ideal future that is credible yet not readily attainable. And usually it's one sentence or a couple words. It's usually not very long at all. For instance, a couple vision statements that they list in the textbook, and they're at the top of page 401 if you want to look at them in the textbook. But for instance, Apple, which we already brought up as someone who seems to be very strong in strategic leadership, their vision statement is to make a contribution to the world by making tools for the mind that advance humankind. So a very broad yet very motivating, inspirational idea. Another one, United Way, which is the last one on this list, is improve lives by mobilizing the caring power of communities. Again, very simple, yet it says a lot in just a couple of words. So the thing to remember with vision statements is that you're always moving toward that vision statement, that a lot of these statements are so, like it says, that maybe not readily attainable, that a lot of these companies, there's no end to ever completing that vision. It's something that you continue to build to. And so it shows here that the vision is moving toward a desired future, and that future in some ways is never attainable because there's always something that could be done to continue to meet that vision, which I find kind of interesting. It's a process that never ends with a lot of these companies. So looking at what a vision does, it links the present to the future like we talked about. Once you have a mission and vision, you have to have some sort of strategy that you're going to implement, and that strategy is in the here and now. So you have to have the present connected with the future. A vision, if it's written well and it demonstrates the path that the organization is moving forward, then it should energize people and focus attention on that vision. It should give meaning to the work that goes along with it, and it establishes a standard of excellence and integrity. Okay? A couple common themes of a vision. Like I said, it has a broad appeal. Since it's only one sentence or just a couple words, it should appeal to everyone within the organization and also to customers as well. So it's very difficult to do. It deals with change. If you look on page 401 and you look at all those vision statements, they all have some sort of change occurring in them or something that that organization or company is reaching for. It reflects high ideals. Obviously, you want to set yourself above other organizations through your vision statement. And then it also defines the destination and the journey. Okay, if you turn to page 402, we're going to do an activity here. We're going to look at your personal vision. So if you would get out a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, or if you have the textbook and want to write in there, it's on page 402 and it's talking about my personal vision. So the instructions here, how much do you think about the positive outcomes you want in your future? Do you have a personal vision for your life? Indicate whether each of the following items is mostly false or mostly true. So I'm going to read 10 statements, and again, you're going to mark mostly true or mostly false if it describes you and your personal vision for the future. Okay, statement number 1, I can describe a compelling image of my future. Is that mostly true or mostly false? I'll repeat that again. I can describe a compelling image of my future. Number 2, life to me seems more exciting than routine. Is that mostly true or mostly false? Number 3, I have created very clear life goals and aims. Is that mostly true or mostly false?
Read that one more time.
I have created very clear life goals and aims. That's number 3. Number 4, I feel that my personal existence is very meaningful. Is that mostly true or mostly false? Number 5, in my life, I see a reason for being here. Number 6, I have discovered a satisfying calling in life. Number 7, I feel that I have a unique life purpose to fulfill. Number 8, I will know when I have achieved my purpose. Number 9, I talk to people about my personal vision. And number 10, I know how to harness my creativity and use my talents. Okay, does anyone need me to repeat any of those questions? Number 7, I feel that I have a unique life purpose to fulfill. Okay, so tally up how many of those you answered mostly true for. So if you answered mostly true, add up as all those points. Okay, did anyone score 7 or above? Do we have any 7 or above? Okay, I see 1 or 2 hands. Okay, how about in the 4 to 6 range? Anyone score between 4 and 6? Okay, looks like about half of the class. And then did anyone score below 3? Okay. Okay, so the higher you score, it says that that indicates that you are in great shape with respect to a personal vision. So if any of these questions you struggled with, or you feel like, well, maybe I don't feel that way where I am right now, it may be important to kind of look at where you've been and come up with steps, like talking about the destination and the journey. Where am I now, and how do I get to where I want to be? Out of these 10 statements here, did any of them stand out as ones that either you feel like you're very strong in, or ones that you feel like you've got some work to do in any of these areas? I think for me, the one that stands out is number 8, the statement, I will know when I have achieved my purpose. I put mostly false for that just because I feel that, like, once I've reached something in my life, it always seems like something else pops up that I want to accomplish more at, or if I don't accomplish something that I think I want to do, then my ideas change about, well, maybe that's not really something I want to do. So when it comes to my purpose or achieving my purpose, I feel like that's almost unattainable for me because it continues to kind of change the older I get. So number 8 is one that is not necessarily a struggle for me, but one that I don't know if I'll ever feel like I've gotten to a point where I've achieved my purpose. Any of the other statements that stand out? Yeah.
I think that one also stood out to me because I feel like if I felt that I had already achieved my purpose, I
Mhm.
felt like I peaked. Sort of.
Yeah, yeah.
And I also feel like that I obviously I have multiple colleagues, like
Yeah.
multiple reasons for me to be here more than just one day.
Yeah, I would say number 6 would be one that, depending on how you take that question, if you only feel like you have one calling in life, then I guess you could answer mostly true for that. But I would agree, hopefully throughout your life, you take on either multiple callings or feel that if you have done as much as you can in one area, you find something else that you're interested in, or explore new ways to continue to grow, and that your vision continues to change for yourself. Yeah. Any of these other ones that stood out to you? Number one? Yeah.
Supervisor last year asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years?
Yeah.
I didn't have a real clear answer to give.
Those questions are always tough. The 5-year, 10-year, where do you see yourself down the road? Those can be hard questions. Kind of going along with that, number two stood out for me as well. Life to me seems more exciting than routine. Sometimes, and I can think back like when I was working on my master's or my doctorate, it all seemed very routine to me. Like it just seemed so monotonous and just like drudging through all these papers and reading. And to me, that question is kind of hard because it seems to me sometimes in life to get where you want to go, sometimes you have to go through certain routines and it's not going to be exciting to get there, but you have to work through it to get to where you want to be. So number two, to me, I answered mostly false because to me, there's been so many times in my life when it seems like routine after routine, it hasn't been very exciting, but I've still reached a lot of the goals that I've set out for myself. So I think that one is kind of a tricky question as well. Any of the other statements that stood out to you? And I think some of these, looking at it from a Christian standpoint, from a biblical standpoint, some of these answer themselves. So for those of you that are Christians, where like for number 4, I feel that my personal existence is very meaningful, that we get our meaning from Christ, and that's explained in the Bible. Number 5, in my life, I see a reason for being here. Jesus gave a lot of examples of, testify, live out your faith, let others see you living out your faith. And that's a reason for being on earth, to love Jesus and glorify him in all that we do. So those kind of things. And then also number 6 and number 7, the Bible talks about all of us having some sort of calling or some sort of things that we've been given strengths by God that we're skilled in and that we can use to help others. And then number 7 as well is that we have a unique life purpose. I believe that all of us were put here on earth for some purpose, and that God will lead us in those directions. And hopefully all of you, if you haven't already, hopefully at some point in your life you discover your purpose and figure out the skills that God's given you to achieve that purpose. So I think looking from a Christian perspective, some of these you have to mark mostly true for, because they're all backed up in the Bible and what God has taught us. So that's kind of looking from a Christian perspective there when it comes to these questions as well. Any other of these statements that stood out to you? Okay, well, hopefully, like I said, if you scored lower on this or feel like there's some areas where you can improve on, definitely do that. I think this is one of the areas where I have some improvement to do, or at least to re-look at some things and discover where I stand. Okay, so here are some steps to creating a vision statement. And I believe, okay, yeah, so we'll do this, and then we'll look at a mission and finish this chapter up. So a couple steps if you're looking to create a vision. This could be a personal vision for yourself. Some of you who are parents or hope to have families someday, you may not write something out, but hopefully you have some sort of vision or a future of where you want your family to be, or how you want your children to act, or where you want them to be. So these can be personal or for an organization. But first of all, you want to target exactly what your desired future is. You don't want it to just be something random that isn't something that you're already striving for. So you want to target exactly what that is. When it talks about co-creating a vision, that means, especially in an organization, that you're including others in that decision-making process from different departments or from different levels of the organization. So co-creating is one that multiple people have a say in what it is. Identify strengths. So again, if you as an organization or as a family or a person have certain strengths, then that vision should back up those strengths. Write a first draft, review it with feedback, and then share the vision once it's been corrected and is ready to go. Those are the steps to creating a vision that the textbook talks about. Now, talking about a mission, these are more of the core purposes of the organization once the vision has been put in place. The mission are kind of they back up or they bring a broader purpose and reason to the organization as a whole. So what does a mission do? Well, it defines the enduring character of the organization. It looks at where the organization has been. It looks at where it is now, and then it looks at the vision to figure out where it wants to be moving forward. And these get a little bit more specific. They draw people to the organization based on what the mission statement is. Usually these are longer. Sometimes there's multiple numbers or bullet points to this. I'm guessing moving forward, when we look at the mission statements of a lot of organizations, there's going to be some sort of statement in there about the health and safety of the organization because of the coronavirus pandemic. So within the next few months, I'm guessing that's going to be kind of a popular trend for organizations to include something in there about that. And then it should also motivate workers that the mission should include some sort of statement or purpose statements for the workers of the organization as well. So they feel like they are part of what's happening and what's going on in the organization. Okay, a couple things that are parts of a mission statement. First of all, the core values of the organization, the core purpose. Why are we here? Why do we do what we do? What are the reasons for us being in business? And then also the core values and purpose are, well, they're frequently expressed in a mission statement. So there was one mission statement I looked at that I can't remember which company it was. I'll have to look at the break, but that the word communication was in almost every part of the mission statement was the word communicate or communication or something of that nature to really back it up with that this is what we as an organization are all about. Some of the, there were some surveys taken, and if you want to look at this chart in the textbook, it is on page 409. And it looks at some like workers or people that work for different organizations and what employees want to see in a mission statement from the organization they look for. You can see there that the mission statement is very important for people who plan to be with the company 1 year from now. You can see 82% of responders said that yes, they agree that that makes their job more important. You can see there at the bottom would recommend the company's products and services based on a strong mission statement, that they feel that a strong mission statement encourages them to talk more about the company. Down at the bottom, say they are paid appropriately. That doesn't necessarily matter as much in a mission statement to workers of that certain company or organization. Okay, here's a mission statement from AFLAC. Again, it's fairly short. Sometimes mission statements can be, like I said, a couple bullet points or almost a page long. I'm sure you could all look at different organizations or businesses and companies, look up their mission statements if you want to. But again, the mission statement of AFLAC is that we pledge to be there for our policyholders in their time of need. AFLAC's philosophy is to combine innovative strategic marketing with quality products and services at competitive prices to provide the best insurance value for consumers. And some of the ways they plan to do that is by building better value for our shareholders, supplying quality service for our agents, and providing an enriching and rewarding workplace for our employees. So based on that mission statement and the values expressed, is AFLAC a company that you would either want to work for or do business with? Do you find that as an attractive mission statement, or does it seem like, well, that's not really something I'm interested in? Or what are the good parts? What are the bad parts? Anything that stands out?
Seems very positive. I mean, being there for the policyholders.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like they wanted to interact.
I like the like you said, the one thing is they kind of touch on not just the people who work for them, not just the agents, not just the shareholders, but the policy holders. That seems like they kind of try to hit every single demographic of their organization to make them all feel like they're part of the mission. So I think that's really good.
Aflac has a 2-day pay promise, so if
Okay.
you file a claim with them, it'll be paid within 2 days if approved.
Okay.
So that to me, like, it's not just a statement, like they back it up with their actions.
Okay. So the whole idea of helping in their time of need, they really take that seriously, that if something bad happens, they're going to help those people out financially or however within a very short period of time. Okay. Does anyone use Aflac? Oh, that was half an hour already? Okay. Well, I will stop there. Let me see what time it is. Okay. If you want to look more at chapter 13, I had a few more things I wanted to go over, but we'll stop there. Looking at making strategic decisions and some of those things as well. But I will stop there. Let's take a break. It's 7:21 now. Let's come back at 7:35. I'll give you 14 minutes, and we will get into chapter 14 and 15. We might be able to do both of them and just be done so we don't need to take another break. All right, so I'll see you back here in about 14 minutes.
Talking to you,
But he puts like
does
before
positions
even
himself,
and
gets phone stuff,
like,
and it's just like, all right, baby, that's it. I'm doing it. It's like,
If it was done for you, you could get it.
yeah. Actually, it's just, I know he does it all the time, while he's sitting there. And he has to get out of rooms for he can get tied up and I don't know, conversation.
All right, can you guys hear me there in Jefferson City? Yeah, Ollie, you can hear me? Okay. Okay, I'll set my alarm again for 30 minutes so that we don't go over. Okay, give me just a second. So we'll do 30 minutes of chapter 14, 30 minutes of chapter 15. Do you guys need another break, or should we just plow through and get these 2 chapters done and be done with it? Just knock it all out. Okay.
Got a paper to write.
We'll let's do 30 minutes of chapter 14. I'll start that clock now, and then we'll do chapter 15, and that means we'll be out of here a little bit before 9 o'clock. So we'll finish a little early tonight. Give you guys a chance to, spend a little time tonight if you need to work on your paper or final exam or whatever you need to do. So you guys are good in Jeff City. You guys can hear me and everything?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, awesome. All right, so for chapter 14, we're going to kind of stick with the whole idea of organizational effectiveness. We looked at the mission and vision very briefly there in chapter 13. Chapter 14, we've looked at culture a little bit already and values, but we're going to look at these a little bit closer here in chapter 14. So the learning objectives for this chapter, first of all, understand why shaping culture is a vital function of leadership. Recognize the characteristics of a responsive as opposed to a resistant culture. Know how to establish a high-performance culture by paying attention to both values and results. Understand and apply how leaders shape culture and values through ceremonies, stories, symbols, language, selection and socialization, and daily actions, and identified the cultural values associated with adaptability, achievement, involvement, and consistency, cultures, and the environmental conditions associated with each. And then finally, the final page of learning objectives: act as a values-based leader and instill healthy values in the organizational culture, and apply the principles of spiritual leadership to help people find deeper life meaning and a sense of membership through work. And so that one we'll look at a little bit when we talk about Carson Newman and kind of the culture and the values of Carson Newman. But before we look at the actual definition of culture from the textbook, when you hear the word culture, what comes to mind? What terms or phrases do you associate with culture when it comes to a workplace environment?
Energy level.
The energy level, okay, I like that.
Can't hear that word without thinking safety culture.
Safety, okay. Yeah, yeah, okay. Anything else?
Mantra.
A mantra, okay,
Kind of how it feels. It's multifaceted.
okay. Anything else? Okay, so the textbook defines culture as the set of values, assumptions, understandings, and norms that is shared by members of an organization and taught to new members as correct. So looking at businesses or organizations that you've worked for before, what are some of the cultural aspects that defined those organizations or businesses? Anything that you would say were very important to the culture?
Communication, like you can just walk up to someone and ask a question.
Communication was vital, okay. One of the things that I know, the culture at Carson Newman, when it talks about understandings, is that, at least from a faculty point of view, they always not necessarily drill it into us, but just, continue to remember that you're here for the students, that the students bring the value to the organization, and that we as faculty are here to help and train and educate and lift up the students of Carson Newman. So we all kind of have this culture that is built around the student body. And so that's kind of what draws us all together at Carson Newman. Anything else that an organization or business you've worked for in the culture, or some aspects of the culture that stood out to you? Okay, kind of another part of that is the idea of norms, and these are acceptable and desirable behaviors within a group of people. So when you hear norms, what comes to mind? I already asked kind of about culture, but what are some norms of organizations that you've been a part of, or behaviors that are acceptable, unacceptable, desirable, undesirable? The rules, okay. Following the rules of the organization, okay. Okay, this chart, or this whatever drawing, however you want to call it, is on page 432 of the textbook, and it gives the idea that what you see on the surface of an organization is only a small part of how much actually goes into it to get to the culture of that organization. So you can look there at number 1, and this is like an iceberg, I guess, is what they're going for here. But number 1 is what is visible to those that either are associated with the organization, maybe the customer base, but those things which anyone can see about the organization. And this could be how people dress, what the office layout is. Is it an open area with a lot of areas to plan and organize as groups, or is it cubicles, all those type of things? What are the symbols of the organization, slogans that either everyone knows or like mantras, like we mentioned? What ceremonies take place? what awards are given to customers, or excuse me, employees, that customers can see. So number one talks about what is visible, what people can see. But below that, the invisible are ideas and expressions that maybe only those that actually work in that organization see, and maybe they're not even written down. Maybe they just have been built up over time. So number two there talks about expressed values. It mentions a couple organizations there in the way that they do business, or they expect their organization to grow together. And then number three talks about the deep beliefs or the underlying principles and assumptions about the organization. Again, that maybe customers or those on the outside don't see, but are very deep rooted in the organization. So you can see there on the side where it says deeper values and shared understandings held by organization members. So I know some of you have worked in business or organizations. So if I were going to ask the visible aspects of the culture that you worked in, what are some of those visible aspects that if I worked into your business, I would see immediately that are very visible to anyone who walks in the door?
Signs and posters about safety.
Okay, so safety information. Okay. Okay, what else? I mean, sometimes I'll walk even into like a fast food restaurant, and usually they have like an employee of the month board up somewhere, or a designated parking spot for employee of the month, or things that show that there is a culture of, you know, there are things that have been put in place. I don't know how they determine employee of the month, but somehow there's an objective route to get to there. And so there is some sort of organizational way that they challenge each other to become better. So that's kind of built into a culture in some ways. Yeah.
I worked at a company, it was environmental consulting, and they had, I mean, you walked into the office and there was interior, it was rock wall, it was earth tones, it was pictures of the mountains. I mean, it was very much, it was that culture that everything was chosen with that in mind, and it was intentional.
Okay. Okay. So just the look and the design. Okay.
Get back to the core business, which is environmental.
Okay. Okay. Any other visible cultural aspects of a place you've worked or that you visited or have noticed through visiting different places? Okay. Continue to look for those things, though. I think culture is something that we might miss out on. And there's a couple reasons why culture is so important to an organization. First of all, it integrates members so that they know how to relate to one another. For instance, Carson Newman as a whole has a culture, again, built toward developing and helping students learn. But within the business organization itself, we also have kind of our own culture, so to speak, where we really try to focus on not just the educational needs, but needs of students outside of the classroom as well. I know the campus as a whole focuses on that, but I feel like within the culture of our business department, we really focus on that. And that's something that's very important to us. And so since I've been here, I've kind of integrated myself into that culture as well, and it's become important to me as well. And it helps the organization adapt to the external environment. So depending on the organization or whatever department or whatever the organization does as a whole, how are other companies doing these same things? Is the organization setting itself apart? Is the culture something that people are attracted to work at and purchase products from, and those type of things? Okay, let's move on to, I'm not going to go over. Okay, so if you want to move ahead to page 11 in the PowerPoints, talking about culture strength. And this is kind of how much of a buy-in you get from the employees that work there. How important is that culture? How important are the values and the way of doing things in that culture? So how many of you have worked for organizations, businesses, or companies before where the culture was very strong and everybody bought in to that culture? Okay, a couple of you. Hopefully, again, all of you at some point work for an organization where the culture is very strong. Like I've said before, the culture at Carson Newman is very strong. And whether I'm teaching, whether I'm out in the community, whether I'm back home, wherever it may be, that kind of goes with me. And I feel like that has been kind of built into me. And the way that I do things, not just on campus, but off campus as well. Some of the things you'll notice about cultures, very quickly, you can tell very quickly if you've got a responsive commitment to the culture or if you have a resistant idea to the culture. So some of the things the textbook talks about, first of all, the visible behavior of not just the stakeholders, but managers, of employees. You can tell very quickly, is the culture in a good place? Is it responsive based on, you can tell very quickly whether people have bought in or not, whether it's the rolling of eyes or just, drudging around doing things, whether it's talking behind people's backs, whatever it may be, you can tell quickly by that. Also, the expressed values, how quickly can you pick up on, is everyone working at the same pace? Are people working together on things? Is there a bright, vibrant ability to communicate? Those type of things as well. And then also the underlying assumption. Is there trust within the organization, or do people distrust each other? Can you tell that people are willing to work together and communicate, or is there a breakdown in those organizations? How many of you have seen specific examples of any of these where you would say, yes, I worked in a very responsive culture, or it was a very resistant culture? Any examples specifically?
I was an intern, back when I was kind of interested in psychology at a opioid recovery clinic.
Okay.
And the CEO would often go talk to the therapist and ask how their client's doing generally, and just kind of listen to how their sessions are going and what needs to change as far as procedures go.
Okay. So there was a lot of miscommunication then? Is that, or no, it was good. It was good because they were keeping up with everybody on those things. Okay. Okay, any other examples? Okay, and sometimes we see a culture gap, and this is where there are desired behaviors, or there is a culture that you're trying to put in place, but there's a big drastic gap between the desires and then the actual values and behaviors of the organization, or those that are working for the organization. So again, there's a lack of buy-in to that organization. Now, Exhibit 14.3, which is on page 438, looks at how performance and cultural values kind of tie into each other. Quadrant B, if you look, I guess that's the green one there, is where you want to be, where people feel like their voices are being heard, that the values are very high, and you're also performing at a high level. If you have a good culture and are performing at a high level, then quadrant B is where you want to be. Quadrant C is the lowest on this chart, and that's where the leaders do not meet performance goals and there is no sort of culture involved in the organization. That is worst case scenario when it comes to the culture gap between the culture of the organization and the performance of the organization. Looking or viewing at some of the organizations you've worked for, which quadrant, give me an example of an organization you worked for and which quadrant you would say that organization fit in. I would say I won't say the name of the university, but I worked for a former university that quadrant A probably would have been where it fit. You know, we performed at a high level. We recruited a lot of students. We were able to increase the student enrollment. Things went really well, but there wasn't much culture at all within the university. We had a lot of commuters come to that university, so a lot of kids that were not on campus very much. There weren't many activities that brought the whole faculty and staff together, so you never really knew what everyone else was doing. It was very segmented. So again, we performed at a high level. We accomplished a lot, but the university setting as a whole did not have any sort of cultural value that went along with it. Any examples that you have of either former or current organizations and what quadrant they fit into?
I feel like the company I worked for a while back had performed very well.
Yeah.
It just didn't have any moral compass. That's not right. Didn't have any cultural compass that
Yeah.
could bound us all together. And so there were pockets of people that were great, but
Yeah.
collectively we weren't heading in the same direction.
So quadrant A as well. I would say Carson Newman as a university is very close to quadrant B. Again, I know I'm probably biased in that, but I would say that the education we provide, the student quality is very solid. Our numbers, enrollment continue to go up, and I feel like all the departments across campus are very connected. You know, I have people, if I have a financial aid question or if I have any sort of issue with student services, I know exactly who to call. They know me, I know them. When we see each other at, you know, functions, school functions, we're all friendly together, and it's kind of the community is really strong at Carson Newman. So I would say Carson Newman is quadrant B for sure. Any other examples you have? Okay, so looking at that quadrant B, this is how the textbook defines that quadrant in a little bit more detail as a high performance culture. This is a culture that is based on a solid mission, embodies shared responsive values that guide decisions, and encourages individual ownership of both bottom line results and cultural values. And the next definition that kind of goes along with that is a cultural leader. And this is someone who uses the signals and symbols to influence corporate culture. How many of you would say that you are a cultural leader, either at your organization or business that you work at? Okay, hopefully all of you at some point work at an organization or business where you feel that you can be active in leading the culture of that organization. I wouldn't say I'm a cultural leader, but I definitely know what the culture is at Carson Newman, and I try as hard as I can to uphold that culture no matter where I am. So, but usually the cultural leaders you see in upper management or like the president of a university or someone, they're usually the one who's the cultural leader, but you can see them throughout the organization. And maybe you would consider yourself one, or you could identify the cultural leaders of your organization. So here's some of the ways that cultural leaders present themselves, and you might be able to identify them based on these couple aspects. First of all, they articulate a vision for the organizational culture that employees can believe in, and they heed the day-to-day activities that reinforce the cultural vision. So that first point there, again, kind of goes back to upper management or a CEO, a president type of role, where you're the one who's articulating that vision. But you can still be a cultural leader by doing on a day-to-day basis the activities that reinforce that vision. So that first one is more from a positional power type situation, and the next one is from more of a personal power type situation. That's what those go along with. Okay, let me see what else in this chapter. Okay. We're going to move ahead a little bit to socialization. So if an organization has a strong culture, what is the process, or how do you get people who especially are new to the organization to kind of buy in or socialize with people? So this is how a person learns the cultural values, norms, and behaviors that enable him or her to fit in with a group or organization. So what are some of the strategies if, let's say, you ran an organization or were part of the human resource department, you hire someone new into the organization, how do you begin that socialization process? What are some of the steps or strategies you would have to do that?
Establish some sort of mentorship program that someone's been here for a while, kind of walk them through the day to day.
Okay. Okay. So have them shadow maybe a couple different workers around the organization to, yeah, see how things work in different parts of the organization. Yeah, I like the mentorship idea. Okay. What are some other strategies to help socialize new employees into an organization?
Our company does a state conduct of research, but anyways, they've got our headquarters is up in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
And so we send a lot of new employees up there for like a 3-day training course, walking through different scenarios, and going through training courses and stuff to kind of understand the way that we operate, and they want people to be thinking and processing situations.
Yeah, I like the idea of training courses, whether you send people somewhere, like you said, to Columbus, Ohio, to the headquarters or on site. But I would agree that training courses, not just on how to do your job, but what our organization is all about and how we as an organization present ourselves to the community or however.
This is really hard to do in these social distancing days when
Mm-hmm.
you can't mentor, you can't, no one's around, but even lunch and learns and
Yeah.
you know, lunchtime sessions to talk about various topics.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Nowadays with social distancing, it is tougher, but yeah, having little, like I know at Carson Newman, to continue to get better at Canvas, learning more tips and tricks. They'll have online videos or Zoom meetings where you can ask questions and things like that. Yeah, luncheons or meet and greet type situations definitely help as well. How else? What are some other strategies to help socialize new employees into the culture of an organization? Groups?
New employee groups, big softball games, I mean, just whatever.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Any way that you can bring new employees with old employees, or bring different people from different departments together. Yeah, social events where you learn more about people outside of what they do at the organization. So stuff like that. Okay, any other strategies for socialization? Okay, let's move on a little bit to organizational values. This kind of goes along with the culture, but now we're really digging down into why does that culture exist? And it usually stems from the organizational values of that operation. So the organizational values are the enduring beliefs that have worth, merit, and importance for the organization. And so if an organization has strong organizational values, usually the culture is going to be very strong as well, because everything stems from the values of that organization. So a couple organizational values would be about the concerns of that organization. What do we care about? What are the things that we're striving to do? Is it where we are really concerned about how our workers work? What is the nature of their work? Are we concerned about globalization and, like we talked about in one of the previous case studies, about diversity and bringing people together? Like it says, increasing diversity in the workforce. Is it shifts in the larger society? Are we concerned Are what we're doing as a business going to have a positive effect on the world? Those type of things. The extent to which the competitive environment requires flexibility or stability. How, especially right now, there's so much flexibility that has to go on within organizations. How do our values line up with the flexibility that needs to happen right now? And then also the extent to which the organization's strategic focus and strength is internal or external. How much do we focus on the internal, the employees that we have, the organization that we have? How much do we focus on our customers, our shareholders, and those type of people that view us from the outside? All those kind of go into organizational values, and it's impossible to meet all those values, and I'm sure you can think of a lot more that could go into it. But if an organization focuses on one or two of those and builds a culture around that, they can be successful doing that as well. Let's see here. See how much time I have left on this chapter. Okay. Let's look at, what do I want to finish with? Oh yeah, I wanted to go over spiritual leadership. So skipping ahead a little bit here, but I think it's important since we are a Christian university and we try to instill some sort of spiritual background in all of our students and faculty and staff. But I'd be interested to hear from some of you as we finish up this chapter when it comes to the spiritual aspect of Christianity in the classes here. How well do you think, I know some of you, this is your first class, so maybe you can't answer that, but for those of you that have been in here for a while, is the Christian aspect, can you tell a difference taking these classes of what kind of school or what kind of culture Carson Newman has? Have you noticed, or just based on the classes as in reference to organizations that you work for, can you sense a difference in culture, or is it not totally, completely evident?
I would say it's evident. I didn't go to a religious school for undergrad.
Okay.
And so my first class here, in ethics,
Mm-hmm.
about the Good Samaritan,
Mm-hmm.
it may have come up at a state school, but
Yeah.
here it was like more prominent.
Okay. So you've noticed a couple things. Okay. Anybody else? Have you noticed a difference in how we either teach or interact or the things that we talk about? Okay. But especially at a school like Carson Newman, and I know there's some businesses, I mean, I look at Chick-fil-A, Hobby Lobby, some of them that are outright or forthright in their Christian values and the way that they lead there. There are things that are important, and I know sometimes we in society, those are looked down upon, but how many of you, when you go to Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby or those type of places, do you sense a difference in how in the culture or the values that they stand for? Has anyone noticed those before? Hopefully it's fairly clear with those, especially those two, the Chick-fil-A and the Hobby Lobby, that there is a difference in the way the values, the attitudes, and the behaviors of those organizations. And hopefully that culture has been built around that Christian aspect as well. Okay, that will be it for chapter 14. Let's go ahead and do chapter 15 and finish with that. Again, I'll set my clock for half an hour and we will go from there. I'll stop sharing this screen for just a minute so I can pull up the chapter 15. So give me just a second to do that. Okay, share screen, chapter 15, or nope, this one. Okay. Okay, can you all see the chapter 15 there at
Yeah.
Jefferson City?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Let me switch one more thing. Okay, so we will finish with chapter 15. We'll go ahead. I set my clock there. Let me get my PowerPoints out for this one. Okay, so this is the last chapter in the textbook, and it talks about leading change. So real quick, let's go through the learning objectives for this chapter. So recognize the environmental forces creating a need for change in today's organizations. Describe the qualities of a change leader and how leaders can serve as role models for change. Implement the 8-stage model of plan change. Use appreciative inquiry to engage people in creating change by focusing on the positive and learning from success. Apply techniques of enabling immersion, facilitating brainstorming, promoting lateral thinking, allowing pauses, and nurturing creative intuition to expand your own and others' creativity and facilitate organizational innovation. And then finally, provide a positive emotional attractor, supportive relationships, repetition of new behaviors, participation and involvement, and after-action reviews to overcome resistance and help people change. Okay, so before we get into this chapter, I just want to ask you, looking at all the craziness that has been happening over these last few months, what are some of the businesses out there, whether it's restaurants or whatever it might be in, that you feel have been at the forefront of leading change or were very quick to meet the needs of customers right when all the coronavirus stuff started? Any companies that stand out? I think about a lot of restaurants and the way that it seemed like they were very quick to go to like curbside pickup or Uber Eats or those type of aspects that, you know, they immediately realized, hey, we need to change the way we get food to our customers. So, you know, setting up all these new unique ways to do it, shutting down the inside of their restaurants, but then still lots of online ordering. I don't know, how many of you have used like a delivery food service since Corona started, like Uber Eats or what are some of the other ones? DoorDash, yeah, yeah. So those companies have been very good at continuing to change and evolve with the times, I would say. Any other companies or industries that you would say have been very instrumental in how they've led change or changed throughout this time?
Seems to me that grocery stores are doing a lot more, particularly for people who are more at risk.
Yeah.
Are ordering online, which wouldn't be the normal crowd you'd think to adopt that
Yeah.
behavior, but they have.
Yeah, I think grocery stores, I would agree. There's a lot more, again, curbside pickup and ordering online. I know a couple grocery stores too have like set aside certain times for seniors or elderly or at-risk people to come in and shop. It's usually in the mornings, I think, like early in the mornings, but they have those set apart times where the risks for those people are hopefully less and that it's more of a safe, healthy environment for them to come in early in the morning after the whole store has been cleaned overnight, and it's a little bit more safe and effective for them to do that. So I would agree. I think grocery stores is a really good example. Any other industries or things that you've seen that have been very quick to change or evolve during this pandemic?
Distilleries switching over to like a hand sanitizer.
Yeah. There have been a lot of companies not just switching to hand sanitizer, but, you know, start making masks or those ventilators, like companies that have never done any of those things before, or bottled waters or those type of things that.
Coca-Cola actually started making, so for the coronavirus test,
The swabs to
they make
test.
Coke bottle tops.
Okay.
They put on the the miles, whatever you put the tests in.
Okay.
fill up, because they could mass produce those
Okay.
to be able to process.
I didn't realize that. So Coke has helped with the whole testing process. Okay. Any other companies that you would say have been very effective in leading change or changing as the times require them to? Churches, I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, going online, having services, streaming.
Well, even, and ours even has, like, you have to sell tickets.
Okay.
They're free.
Like you have to sign up ahead of time
Which
to.
you have like a sold out.
Yeah. Yeah, you've been sold out every week. Yeah. Yeah, you have to start scalping tickets in the parking lot to get in. And yeah. And concessions, you got concessions going through the rows selling. Yeah. No, but it's true. Churches have changed a lot. So there's tailgating. Okay. So I would agree. I think churches have kind of led the way things change. Okay, one of the things that forces change within an organization, first of all, technological advances, globalization, social media and the information revolution, economic turbulence, which we've seen over the last few months, shifting social attitudes, changing market forces, again, is another big one that's happened, e-business and mobile commerce, which again has been one of the things that has been influenced drastically through the coronavirus, and then increasing regulation, again, with cleaning and health regulations coming into play. I think that one's going to change forever when we think about it. Most people, though, are naturally resistant to change, whether you like to admit to it or not. Once you feel comfortable in life, once you've kind of hit your stride, so to speak, it's very hard to get somebody to change and change the way that they do things. So leaders, when you're in a leadership position, you need to be aware that if you're trying to make change happen, you're going to have people that are resistant to it. And you need to find ways to enable people to see the value in these changes needed to succeed. Now, it might look a little bit different right now with coronavirus because people are so in need of jobs that a lot of people are willing to make the changes necessary to keep their jobs and stay employed. So it's a little bit hard to know right now. Resistance to change, in some ways, more employees are more willing to do it because it's necessary right now in a lot of ways to keep your job. So on page 466, this will be the last activity we do in class. But on page 466, we're going to do the activity talking about resistance to change. And so you're going to, again, respond to these 12 statements, and you're going to tell me how you handle the day-to-day issues in your life. So I'll read these statements, and you say mostly true or mostly false on how you handle change or issues in your life. So statement number one, I generally consider changes in my life to be a negative thing. Is that mostly true or mostly false? Number two, when I am told of a change of plans, I may tense up a bit. Is that mostly true or mostly false? Number three, once I have made plans, I am not likely to change them. Number four, I often change my mind. Number five, whenever my life fits a stable routine, I look for ways to change it. I'll read that one again. Whenever my life fits a stable routine, I look for ways to change it. Number six, I feel less stress when things go according to plan. Number seven, I sometimes avoid making personal changes even when the change would be good for me. Number 8, my views are very consistent over time. Number 9, I prefer a routine day to a day full of unexpected surprises. Number 10, if I were informed of a significant change in my work, I would tighten up. Number 11, when someone pressures me to change something, I tend to resist it. And then number 12, once I have come to a conclusion, I stick to it. Does anybody need me to repeat any of those? Okay, so here's how you score yourself. First of all, questions 1, 2, and 3, give yourself a point if you said mostly true. To 1, 2, or 3, give yourself a point. For 4 and 5, give yourself a point if you marked mostly false for 4 or 5. And then for the rest of them, 6 through 12, give yourself a point. Sorry, hold on just a second. Oh yeah, for 6 through 12, give yourself a point if you marked mostly true. So 1 through 3 and 6 through 12, if you marked mostly true, give yourself a point for each true. And then for 4 and 5, if you marked mostly false, give yourself a point for each of those. And then tally up how many points total you got. Okay, so how many of you scored over 8? Okay, 8 to 12. Okay, how many of you scored in the 6 or 7, 5 through 7 range? Okay, and how many of you scored below 4? Okay, so the higher your score, the more resistant to change you probably are. Now, how many feel that based on the score they received, it's fairly accurate as to how well you know yourself and how resistant to change you are? Do you think your score reflects pretty closely? Okay, so which of these statements here did you either say, yes, that absolutely is me, or which ones did you struggle with, or what were some of these statements that stood out to you?
I think the questions about fixing up before big changes are announced.
Okay, number 10, like that one.
Yeah.
Okay, that you would tighten up before a significant change.
Yeah, sort of like winding up Jack or Rock.
Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. And just so you know, I scored a 9 on this, which I think is fairly accurate for me. Once I kind of feel a comfort level in my life, I want to stay there. So I would say I'm fairly resistant to change, and it's something that I probably need to work on, but it is something that that I would admit is something that I struggle with when changes do happen. Any of the other statements that stood out to you as being very accurate for you, or ones that you know you need to work on?
Number 6 is right on.
I feel less stress when things go according to plan. Yeah, I definitely is true. Yeah. Hopefully everybody marked mostly true for that, because I don't know of anyone, or very few, that would say they want things to go bad because they feel less stress when they go bad. So yeah, I would say for me also, number 8 is fairly accurate for me, that my views are very consistent over time. Not that I'm just, very rigid and very, however you want to put it, but it would take a lot to convince me, especially on, obviously Christianity and stuff. I'm not going to change my views on that. But a lot of things, I feel like I'm fairly at my age, I know what I stand for, and it's not going to really change. So I would say that one. The other one that stood out to me is number 3. I'm somebody, once I've made plans, I'm not likely to change them. That's very accurate for me. I like to know where I'm going to be when, and if I have a plan, especially like for travel or vacation time or things like that. Once those are in place, it's very unlikely that those are going to change for me. So so that's one that stood out. Any of these other statements that stood out for you? Okay, so again, the higher you scored, the more resistant to change you are. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that your personal resistance to change will affect, like we talk about here within an organization, but how many of you feel differently, like between your personal life and an organizational life or a job? Like, for instance, when it comes to resistance to change, if Carson Newman's policies or the job description or however changed, I would be less resistant to that because it's my job than maybe in my personal life where I'd be a little bit more resistant to things. So I think it can differ based on the situation in your life. Anyone else with an opinion on that? Agree or disagree?
I would agree. I mean, I think my personal life, plans change, things happen.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me as much as changes at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, part of that depends on what the change is, obviously.
Yeah.
But, it's changing scheduled jobs, that's no big deal.
Yeah.
But if it's, like that one question, something about significant changes in my work,
Mm-hmm.
I've become a little more uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think resistance to change can differ based on the situation and the realities in your life at a certain point. So yeah, continue to look at that, and I think it's something that could be important as you get into the workforce and things like that. Okay. Let's see what else I want to talk about here. Okay, so we're going to skip ahead a little bit here. Okay, so talking about when we look at change within an organization, one of the things that's drastically important, if you're going to change a culture or change the way you do business, it's going to take a lot of creativity. How many of you would say that you're fairly creative people, or when you're faced with a situation, you think of new or vibrant ways to solve that issue? Would anyone say they're creative? Okay. So creative people, when it comes back to change and leading change, these are people or ideas that are both novel and useful for improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the organization. And again, going back to coronavirus, creativity is drastically needed right now in organizations to fit with the new times and the way that business is done. So we're seeing a lot of creativity talking about supermarkets, restaurants, all these different types of things. I know I have a younger sister who works in a visitors bureau in Indiana, and they've had to come up with new creative ways to get to sell hotel rooms or to get people to travel there. It's taken a lot of creativity to come up with ways to still make a living and push people to travel and visit places while still respecting the need for health and cleanliness and safety. So there's a lot of that going on right now as well. So a question for all of you then, if you're going to foster a creative culture, what are some of the ideas that you personally, if you were a leader in a creative culture, what are some ideas to foster that culture?
You gotta be willing to put yourself out there, to be creative yourself and kind of lead the way.
Okay. So you display that creativity in yourself, and hopefully that bleeds down to other people within the organization.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
allow people to speak their mind candidly.
Okay. Yeah. You allow for open discussions, whether it's brainstorming. I think we might have skipped, or is it still coming up? Yeah. Brainstorming is one idea that is on a PowerPoint page coming up. So I would agree with that.
Denzo has like a place you could submit creative ideas for improvement, whether that be on process lines or just different things.
Okay.
And they gave out, awards if you had the best one for whatever the period is, and they would give out, gift cards or movie tickets.
Okay.
And stuff like that.
Okay. So that was like, you said it was like a bulletin board type thing, or how did that?
You just submit the ideas.
Okay. So you
for the
submit it.
departments,
Okay.
and they go through and they'll pick, this one
Okay.
beneficial or the best idea. Or whatever.
Okay. So really encouraging. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Any other ways to encourage or foster a creative culture? I know a lot of organizations or small businesses, like we were talking about, you can tell a lot about the culture when you walk into a business, but I don't know if any of you have been there. It's kind of a new style of business or a workplace where it's very open. People are sitting at either long tables, or there's a lot of community areas, where they can, I've even seen a couple businesses that have like ping pong tables out in the middle of a social area, or a video game area. But again, just areas where people can congregate, kind of get away from the whatever burdens they have sitting at their desk or at their workplace, and just kind of talk through things or focus on something else for a little while before they jump back in, and throwing around ideas, how things could go better, and but making it fun and enjoyable for the organization to come up with those creative ideas. Has anyone seen those before? I don't know if you've seen those, but it seems like the open workspaces are becoming more popular. Less cubicles, more people can move around, talk to different people, sit together. You think we're going the other way? Yeah, I would think so too. Yeah. Yeah. Which is too bad. I mean, it's a wild time right now for sure. So looking at, we're going to talk about brainstorming next, because I think that's important to talk about. So brainstorming is the idea of a technique that uses face-to-face groups to spontaneously suggest a broad range of ideas to solve a problem. So like we mentioned in brainstorming sessions, how many of you have been part of brainstorming sessions before, or yeah, okay. So one of the things like we mentioned is that in these sessions, it's an open space for no criticism. That, even if the idea is just totally silly or, totally ridiculous, it's still open, and maybe ideas can be generated from that, but no criticism takes place. Freewheeling is welcome. I know, oh man, there's some people that once they get going, like I won't name the name of the person, but within the business department at Carson Newman, there's one person who, once they get on an idea or get on their soapbox, it's almost impossible to stop them from talking. Now, in a lot of meetings, that can get very frustrating, but in a brainstorming session, unless you've put a time limit on it, sometimes that person can say things or bring up ideas that maybe no one had thought about before, or at least look at it from their point of view that had never been thought of or discussed before. Can anyone think of people like that once they get on their soapbox, it's almost impossible to get them off of it? And they may jump around from thing to thing, and you're like, what is going on with this person? But you want people to feel free to just throw out ideas or concerns or whatever it may be. And then quantity is desired as well. The more people, not necessarily that you have in a huge group, but sometimes having breakout groups from the big group, but the more ideas, the more brains that you can get connected with change, the more important it is. Okay, A couple ideas to help people become more creative. First of all, the whole idea of brainstorming at the very top there is very important. So if you're in a situation where you're trying to affect change, brainstorming is a great way to do that. Lateral thinking, again, this is looking at things from different people's points of view, whether it's different departments or different job descriptions, but promoting the idea of not just looking out for yourself, but looking out for the common good of everyone that works here. Enable immersion. This comes back to the idea of understanding what other people in the organization do and how that interacts with what you do. Allow pauses. Again, I don't know if any of you have worked for organizations where maybe you have a brainstorming session, you know, theoretically say, okay, well, let's press pause on this. Let's go back and think about it some more, and then we'll come back and talk about it some more. That gives people a chance to kind of make more concrete ideas or think more broadly on it before coming back. And then also nurture intuition. If people do have good ideas or you see people that are really thinking about it, you want to encourage them keep thinking about it. Don't degrade them or make them feel like what they're thinking or what they're processing to be silly or ineffective for the organization. So all of those promote creativity and can be very effective in that process. Okay. Let me see here if there's anything else that I wanted to go over. Okay, we'll finish with this. This will be the last thing that we talk about. Keys that help people change, and this can be, again, personally or in a business situation, but you want to provide a positive emotional attractor, something that people can get behind and they feel that change is going to be positive for them and for the organization as a whole. Make sure people have a support system. If you're going through a lot of changes in an organization or a business, you want them to know that they're not alone in this, that we're all in this together, and that we as an organization are going to come through stronger and make the changes necessary to be effective. Use repetition, whether that's the use of mantras or the value statement or mission or whatever it is, keeping everyone on the same page going through the change. Involve people early. Even when it comes to change, maybe letting some of the people who are doing the day-to-day grunt work come up with the ideas of how, this is how our business is going to change. So now we need you to look at what your systems are and how can you fit your changes into the change of the culture or the organization as a whole. And then also apply after action reviews. And this is just the idea of, as these changes are occurring or once the changes have been implemented, going back and looking at where have we been successful, where did we fail, and if changes are going to be made in the future, what can we do to make it better? Those are some of the ideas there. Let's see how I did on time. 30 seconds left, so I did awesome. Are there any questions about chapter 15? Okay, well, that is everything from the textbook. Are there any questions about either of the assignments for this week, the paper or the written exam? Once again, those are both due Friday at midnight. I've really appreciated having all of you in this class. Hopefully I see you all again in a future class. Once again, I'll be in my office tomorrow from 9 to 1. So take the time tonight if you need to. I'm letting you out a little bit early. It's only 8:40. So you have some time now if you want to put together your rough draft or whatever and get that submitted to me. If not, then I look forward to reading all of your assignments once they're submitted on Friday. Any last minute questions or anything?
Just to recap, if you're looking for like 2 to 3 paragraph responses.
2 to 3 paragraphs per response. And cite, if you use the textbook directly, cite it. But if you're just using general ideas, then you don't need to do that. But you're more than welcome to find outside sources as well for those exam questions, but I don't think you'll really need to. They're pretty straightforward from the textbook. So, yep, both the paper and the test due midnight Sunday, or Friday, excuse me. Also, if you have any outstanding assignments that you have not yet submitted, you can turn those in this week for partial credit, but I would say 99% of your focus this week should be on the paper and the written exam, because those are both 100 points, and every other assignment in this class has been worth either 10 or 20 points. So at this point, if you haven't already gotten it in, then I would say don't worry about turning it in at this point. Okay? All right, well, thank you all, and I will hopefully see you all again at some point. And good luck with your next class. I believe all of you start one next week, so so enjoy that as well. Yep, thank you.